We're approaching this period now when white philanthropy want to know what to do with us. Bishop Turner has not only arose, but Bishop Turner is on the warpath. Bishop Turner has already made one of his back to Africa trips. Now, he actually took people back to Africa. More people went under Bishop Turner than under Garvey. We've forgotten Bishop Turner. It's unfortunate we've forgotten most of our heroes. Bishop Turner hated what the country had done to his people so much, he would mount an American flag in the pulpit before his sermon, and for 15 minutes, starting with the statement, "This flag ain't nothing but a GD rag," he would preach 15 minutes against the flag and the betrayal of his people and the lies the country telling his people. Then he would calm himself down and pick up his Bible and preach a sermon. Now, Bishop Turner was on the rage.
In the early 1900s, Booker T. Washington was one of the most prominent and influential African-American leaders in the United States. His complex relationship with Black Americans during this era was shaped by his philosophy, leadership style, and the socio-political environment of the time. His approach to racial uplift was encapsulated by his famous Atlanta Compromise speech of 1895, where he advocated for Black Americans to focus on vocational and industrial education, economic self-reliance, and gradual progress rather than immediate demands for civil rights and political equality. He believed that by providing for their monetary value to society, African Americans would eventually gain the respect and rights they deserved. This philosophy resonated with many Black Americans, particularly those in the South who faced the harsh realities of segregation, disenfranchisement, and violence. Washington's emphasis on hard work, education, and self-help provided a practical path forward in an era when overt resistance could result in brutal reprisals. His achievements in building Tuskegee into a respected institution and his ability to secure funding from white philanthropists earned him widespread admiration and support. However, Washington's accommodationist stance also generated significant criticism and division within the African American community. Critics, most notably W.E.B. Du Bois, argued that Washington's approach was overtly submissive and deferred the struggle for civil rights. Du Bois and others advocated for more confrontation against racial injustice and a demand for immediate political and civil equality, which they believed was essential for true progress. Welcome to On the Shoulders of Giants. I am Joseph Ward, and today we are learning from the great Dr. John Henrick Clarke, hearing his breakdown on the impact of Booker T. Washington, particularly Booker T. Washington's impact on Black America. And was it a positive impact? Was it a negative impact? Now, we know he had an impact, and we know the contributions he made to Black America, especially with the founding of Tuskegee and his ideas about Black people uplifting themselves. So let's sit back and listen to the late, great Dr. John Henrick Clarke break down Booker T. Washington's impact on Black America, and then we're going to come back and talk more at the end.
White people wanted to know who is the leader of these radical people. Who can I communicate to calm them down? Not getting any answer, they decided they would create a leader. And they would anoint him. This is the beginning of the age of the anointed leader. But don't judge Booker too fast now, because Booker ran as many games on them as they ran on him, and got millions for education while doing it, and hated their guts. If you read Up From Slavery, this is not reflected in his book Up From Slavery. It's reflected in his personal letters. Now 10 volumes of his letters have been published. Now whites decided to tap this young man and prepare him for leadership, and they alerted the editors of all the white newspapers to start writing editorials about him and literally deliver him to us as our leader. There was an exhibition in Atlanta, the Atlanta Cotton Exhibition. Booker T. Washington was going to be the keynote speaker. Though he was the keynote speaker, he had to arrive and come through a Jim Crow door and wait in a Jim Crow section until it was his time to speak. And when he started speaking, though we were in the 19th century, when he finished, we were in the 20th century. In the troubles of the 20th century. This evening I've been trying to find the actual speech. I must have at least 6 copies in the house and couldn't find one. Booker T. Washington began his speech. His speech is all things to all people. Now, if you want to listen to a con game, Booker T. Washington's famous Atlanta speech is one of the most unique con speeches ever made. He's catering to the whites of the southerner, and he's catering to the northerner. And he have his clincher. He's telling the blacks that it's better to run a truck farm than to do all of this stump political speeching. This pleases the whites. Get us out of politics. See, he's patting both sides. And that it's best, he's telling the general blacks, it's best to make $1 a day. $1 a day was a pretty good salary for black men in that period. Than to sit next to whites at the opera. He's telling the whites, we don't want social equality. All we want is a job. They like that. Now, Booker began to tell the northerner, build factories in the South. We will not strike like the immigrant craftsmen up north. He called the foreigner who strikes and founds labor unions an ingrate. The North lacks that. He tells the South, be good to us, we're your friends. We'll not only nursed your children, took care of you in days of old. Then his clincher, we even followed you with tear-dripped eyes to your grave. He got the South now. Now he got the South, he got the North, he got part of the blacks. And he continues the speech. His speech now is an appeal to all of them. And he tells a story about a man at sea, shouting to all the ships that pass, water, water, give me water. And finally a ship shouts out to him, cast down your buckets where you are. That you sailed out of the salty sea, you're now in the Gulf Stream, and there's clear water all around you. Just cast down your buckets and drink the water. Beautiful symbol. Now he's telling both the blacks in the South, the northerner, invest in the South. Invest some faith, in the South. Then he glances widely over the audience. He had come through the exhibitions and said that the caliber of a race is known by what it displays, and said that we have on display here in this exhibition some quilts and some of our agricultural products, and it shows how far we've come from slavery, and also shows how much we need from you. Now the white money men open up their pockets and say, if that's all they can do, I better give them a few nickels that they can do a little better than that. Now he tells blacks that if you're going to be a servant, be a good servant and get a good salary. Now what he's saying is practical, and it was high politics for that day. Brilliant politics for the day. Finally, he finishes the speech saying that if all these things are achieved, we shall have a new heaven and a new earth. Couldn't be better than that. Now, amid all these applause, blacks sitting in the balcony, you notice that some blacks are crying. Some black waving their hands. Oh, no, Book, it ain't that good. Come on, knock it off, bro. And some of them come up to him and start, and some refuse to shake his hand. Why this went unnoticed? Black rejection of what he said, because blacks knew it was partly fantasy. He was running a game that couldn't be that good. After Booker T. Washington's speech, many blacks began to vote with their feet, began to leave the South. And when you any history of the migration of blacks from the South, it began in earnest after this speech.
The relationship between Booker T. Washington and black Americans in the early 1900s was thus multifaceted. For some, he was a beacon of hope and a pragmatic leader who understood the realities of their situation. For others, he was a symbol of compromise and a figure whose strategies were insufficiently confrontational against the oppressive system. Regardless of differing opinions, Washington's impact on the trajectory of African American progress during this critical period in history is undeniable, shaping the discourse on race, education, and empowerment for generations to come. Dr. John Henrick Clarke laid out a few points about Booker T. Washington that I believe we should examine more to see the overall impact that it had on black America, not at the time of the speech and at the time that Booker T. Washington was alive, but also the effects that his ideologies and his actions had on black America today. How does that affect us today? And what can we learn from the actions and the ideologies of Booker T. Washington? One, Booker T. Washington was chosen by white America. He was delivered to us as our leader. That's one important point. Two, Dr. Clarke believes that Booker T. Washington ran con games, not just on white America, but black America, with his ideas about bringing the races together and what black people needed to do to uplift ourselves to become in better graces with white America. And remember, Dr. Clarke is specifically talking about Booker T. Washington running con games while delivering his famous Atlanta Compromise speech of 1895. Also, Dr. Clarke pointed out that when Booker T. Washington went to go deliver that speech, he was still under the Jim Crow laws. So I believe that may have been some of the fuel behind Booker T. Washington looking to integrate or bring black America into the same spaces or have that equality with white America. And remember, Dr. Clarke also stated that Booker T. Washington in the speech was saying that the contents of the speech was all things for all people. All things for all people, but we know in the system of white supremacy, a black man can't deliver a promise that will be all things to all people because there was still imbalance and dominance and inequality in there. Even though Booker T. Washington believes that if black people can produce more, if we can earn more, if we can get more jobs, if we can build more for ourselves, we will be in better graces with white America. Booker T. Washington also believed that it was better for black people to farm and produce than engage in politics. And I'm glad Dr. Clarke pointed that out. When I learned more about Booker T. Washington, as well as his opposition with W.E.B. Du Bois, in my opinion, I thought the ideas could have been merged, right? Not only can we produce for ourselves, but we can build political power. So we can have power on more than one front. We can have economic power and political power. Dr. Clarke also pointed out that Booker T. Washington believed that it was better to earn money than to gain social equality. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think power comes from earning money rather than social equality? I mean, we have social equality now with no economic power. So did Booker T. Washington actually have a point with that? Booker T. Washington believed that the South needed to be invested in more, and thus that goes to what Dr. Clarke pointed out, telling the North to build more factories in the South so they can have more jobs and more opportunities for not just the blacks in the South, but the South overall. Because remember, in this speech, Booker T. Washington was appealing to black people, the North, and the South. And that's why Dr. Clarke is saying he was running the con game, because he's promising something that he can't deliver. So that's where the idea of investing in the South is good for America. And he also talked about how as Dr. Clarke pointed out, the con game to the South, appealing to the senses of the South, talking about that black people are the friends of the South, that black people nurture the children of the South, and that go more into investing in the South and making sure that the South understands the important relationship that black people have with them. So that's where Dr. Clarke gets more into the con game of going to the feelings and the emotions of the South. So these are a few points, key points that I pointed out these are a few key points that stood out to me rather as I was listening to this. So what are your thoughts? I want discourse. I want your comments. I want your feedback in the comment. Tell me, what do you think about this? And what do you think about a video like this? Was this interesting? Was this enlightening? Did this make you think? And if so, maybe I can give you more. So this is Joseph Ward trying something new, but I had this audio of Dr. Clarke talking about Booker T. Washington. And I thought it was interesting, and I want to give some insight, get some thoughts about it, and give it to you, and let's have discourse. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk. See y'all in the comments.